Remember that record that you bought me like 2 years ago? Well, I just remembered that it's sitting in the closet. So I called you up just to tell you I've been meaning to listen to that. I've been meaning to listen to that. Why don't you come over and talk about it? Ooh, why don't you come over and talk about it?
And we're back here to talk about Tupac's All Eyez on Me. I also just like want to before we get to songs, I also just wrote some stuff down that I want to share of I think this album is performance art. There's just in real time, he's channeling the public's love and hate of him into an energy source. And he's also method acting with he never claimed to be an actual gangster, like a gang member ever. West Side isn't a gang. It's right. But he was method acting by being around Suge Knight, being around these folks. And it was fueling, this album feels like Lady Gaga just came out with an album called Harley Quinn. It's about she wasn't done being Harley Quinn, so she wrote an album in that
movie is doing so terribly right now. I'm glad to see it. They should punch themselves in the face for being who wants to see a Joker musical? I don't not want to see a Joker musical. Okay.
People are walking out.
That was a terrible idea. I saw that coming a mile away.
But you know what's wild though with that movie? It got a 12-minute standing ovation at Cannes or something. So what were they looking at? I don't get it.
But 12 minutes, they clap for 20, 25 minutes. 20 minutes applause. That's so 12 minutes is not a lot. 12 minutes.
It was a double disc of applauding, it was disc one, we're standing, and then disc two, okay, let's sit down, but we're still clapping. It made, I don't know. Anyway, whatever.
Oh my God. They were just tickling their own balls that day. I don't know what they were
But this feels like a soundtrack to a movie that doesn't exist. The movie is actually his life. You turn on the TV, Justin, you're talking about even when he was in prison, he was still present in the media. He was still his presence was felt, and it's felt now. So it feels like a soundtrack to a character basically. And it feels and who is this character? He's he calls himself a tragic Shakespearean character who's angry, paranoid, horny, I don't give a fuck. He's hardened and bitter by prison, but he's also empathetic and sensitive, and he gives so much of a fuck. And he was a activist at one point. So I think part of it's just him playing into the public perception of just you think I'm a horrible criminal, I'm just gonna lay into it so hard so that I could just do whatever I want now. You can't, right. that doesn't hurt me anymore. While also I imagine him being so sad that he wasn't able to do what he was put on earth to do on some level.
Maybe he did, I think his influence has reverberated. What was this? 2 decades, 3 decades? Mm-hmm. 3 decades ago, So perhaps he did, the interview you quoted earlier where he says maybe he sparks a person who changes the world, I think he's sparked a lot of people who are in that direction. I definitely know he sparked Kanye. Kanye is prep school Pac anyway. Whether or not he went to a prep school, he's working at the Gap, being Tupac, you know what I mean? You got all the stuff that Kendrick is doing and the impact it's having. I never thought about this as performance art, but I see how it could come across that way, because, Pac he didn't grow up in a gang-banging household environment.
That's right, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that persona definitely got turned up when he got to Death Row. But everything at Death Row was very turned up, Doggy Style, for probably the biggest album in the world right before All Eyez on Me. I mean, Doggy Style is, that album is excessive if you really wanted to pinpoint and break down every, lyric and all the people who die on that project and, you know, all the, just the mentality. But that was what was coming out. Like, you know, gangster rap was, you know, almost like superhero thuggery, you know? So I can see how it looks like that. I think that Pac also being such a great actor, you know, like, you know, one of my early entry points to Tupac too was the movie Juice. You know, that was a huge movie. That was I mean, whether or not, I don't even have no idea what it sold, right? I don't know what tickets it did, but I know everybody I knew that I loved and everybody in my family, we all watched Juice every time it came on TV. You know what I mean? And so I can see how you could bridge those two things. I still always find him as a very sincere person, though. Right. I'm not saying that you're saying that, but what I am saying is, like, I don't know how much of what he put in his music was character, coming from a place of developing a character.
I don't think he was like intentionally doing that.
Yeah.
I think like I think he is like leaning into public perception to get at truth, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, he was definitely very upset. He was upset. He got shot. Yeah. Nobody got in trouble. He was in jail for something he didn't do. He believes he didn't do, you know. But yeah, he definitely turns it all the way up on this album.
And I also think, like, you know, the human experience is so much of us turning up and turning down parts of us, right? Like, you go to work and you turn down maybe the more like braggadocious side of you in order to fit a corporate or business like, you know, scheme. And then, you know, you're in a relationship and you turn up some of the emotions you won't show your closest friends because they might judge you, or you don't want to seem like weaker to your guys, you know. So there's a lot of this muting and turning up that happens to our own emotions, but we're always ourselves, right? Like, those are all versions of ourselves. And I think Pac, like, after going to jail, getting shot, like we said a million times, he then says, okay, well, I'm just going to mute some of the sensitivities that makes it a bit more accessible for people to sit down, have a coffee, and think, oh, wow, like, yeah, you know what, we're not necessarily ready to see a Black president. And what does that mean in a grander scheme of America? And it just says, like, you know what, like, ain't nothing but a gangster party.
Ain't never the gangster party.
You know, like it's, so it's not, it is performance in that he's saying, like, I'm not going to give you all the stuff I gave you before, but it's not in that it's like that part of me, that ambition as a writer is me. Like, I am that guy, and I could just be that guy and fuck it, because motherfuckers love it. You know, right. And if motherfuckers love it, like Jay said, right? Like Jay said, like, you know, I want to be a Talib Kweli. Truthfully, I want to rhyme like common sense, but I made $5 million. I didn't rhyme like common sense, right? Like, he understands, like, well, the commodification of this thing. If I want to reach as many people, where Jay was more like, if I don't want to make as much money, I have to reach a lot of people. Pac is like, if I want to have an influence over as many people, there are some times where I just gotta gangbang. And not because I'm a gangbanger, but because those gangbangers that are part of our community have an emotion. They are very emotional, and they are very essential to the growth of our community. And so let me make sure that as they're hearing this, they might actually pause it for a second and say, well, wait, like, there's more to this than just a surface level that we might seem like America only wants from us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, you take an album like Straight Outta Compton, you know, and it makes you feel like all of them were getting beat up by the police every day and drive-bys every day, you know. I think the West Coast is more cinematic, and I don't want to say cinematic, but I think that Hollywood is such an omnipresent industry on the West Coast that people will turn things up more than maybe perhaps it really is. And again, I mean, he said this album was for Suge in an interview. And so obviously he's super prolific. Obviously he is still, you know, has his frame of mind coming out of prison. And obviously he really cares about reaching people and uniting people. So I think all those elements are at play on this project.
Yeah, there's just a small thing I thought about, just like the idea of what it means to package this version of Pac and export it, right? based on of all of the content, this really does feel like this is for that insular community to work with all of the songs and all of the content. And this doesn't necessarily need to reach that outsider group, the folks who don't necessarily understand the intricacies of what it means to live this life. Even being a part of the Black community, being like a suburban Black kid, I'm like, what business do I have kind of analyzing this or like trying to piece it together when there's a very stark disconnect, and take it beyond outside of the Black community. There's even that much more of a gap in kind of, I don't know, fraying of what the meaning could potentially be in this album. I'm not saying this because I have some sort of grand way to package that up, but it's something that I thought about while I was listening to. It was like, who is the audience for this? Is it just the
everybody? Everybody's the audience for this. I mean, there's just like California Love, for example. Like Tupac is unique because he owns California twice and Mother's Day. Right? Like every Mother's Day, you're gonna hear Pac, and as soon as you get to California, you're gonna hear California Love. You're gonna hear if you're in LA, you're gonna hear To Live and Die in LA. California hasn't had a new anthem and until Not Like Us. Which is Kendrick, which is, Pac is his number one dude. He's heavily influenced by Pac. And so you do have moments like that on this album. Like, Only God Can Judge Me, right? I mean, that's a very personal look at a lot of things that he was experiencing, from a legal system standpoint, things like that. Or Two of America's Most Wanted, right? That is a perspective that is very, very, very direct to people who have had to deal with the legal system in one way or the other. Like, if you haven't had to go to court, if you haven't had a case in front of you, you probably can't directly commiserate with what is being said on the song. But I think that the themes on the album resonate even past perhaps just analyzing the lyrics, right? Because again, he's not kicking a whole bunch of, gang politics on the album. He's just, he makes clear not to do that, because it's at the same time, he still, in my mind, has broader intentions to unifying, his whole thug life thing, right? That was to attempt to unify people regardless of whatever colors they might be wearing and things like that. So, the big moments on this album, it's a double disc, so it might feel like there's, it is overload because it's a double disc. But like, you look at a song like, California Love, or you look at a song like Life Goes On, and it reminds me that this album really, the intended audience for this really was everybody else, even if it wasn't just, as consciously balanced as maybe some of his previous projects were. If you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure how clear I was with that answer, but I think that there's a reason why this album was so popular. And I don't necessarily think that it was solely based off of like, the gratuitous anger that is throughout the whole thing. Like, he's still a poet at heart.
Also, I think this album sounds great.
Yes.
I think this album is like, we listened to Illmatic. I love that album. But there's like a datedness to some of the beats, like, the Pete Rock, the DJ Premier, some of the beats, like, feels like the scratching and stuff. Like, it feels very dated. But like, this is like one step behind today. I think partly because like everyone's trying to pay tribute to this time, like, in a way, it feels like that. But like, this sound, like the Dr. Dre sound, the DJ Quick sound, like it sounds pretty modern and or timeless, or of a time, but it sounds good today.
Yeah, I think this album, if you take Pac's previous projects like Shook It For My Niggas, Tupacalypse now, and oh my God, I'm just
Me Against the World.
Me Against the World. There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it. You take those previous albums, like, they're still really quality albums. I just feel like sonically they're a bit more dated. It's harder for me to, they feel more like time capsules than they do something I might necessarily just be able to rock on the reg, right? This album, and then definitely Machiavelli. Those two albums I think there's a reason why you still hear so many songs from these albums, just in wherever you might go, you hear a DJ playing something, you know what I mean? And that's a testament to Dr. Dre on this project. Dre, Daz, Quick, like everybody, all the people over there in Death Row and all the people who came together on this project, like there's a reason why they're all in the pantheon of producers. You know, like they really crafted that West Coast gangster rap G-Funk sound is timeless. And they were able to amplify it with, a little bit more modern technology, I think, by the time All Eyez On Me comes out. But like everything they put together, and to me personally too, like the second half of this album, those are really like party songs for the most part, right? You got like Checkout Time over here. You got like Picture Me Rolling over here. You got Can't See Me, All Eyez On Me. Like that is the humanity in it. That is, those are examples of songs that really just cross different boundaries regardless of, the energy overall in the project. Like everyone wants to have a good time, and the producers on this album made sure that they'd have a good time forever.
Wow. So let's start with disc one. Just like what's a highlight song for you, Justin, on disc one?
Ambitionz Az a Ridah. It's the hardest intro song to me. Like it's to this day, it's still the hardest intro song to me ever. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. That was my probate song. Like it's part of like Black Step Show culture. Like when you during your probate, you're like unveiled or whatever. That's what I came out to. That beat is nuts. So that is the first standout song. Truthfully, everything on the first disc is a standout song to me, except for What's Your Phone Number.
Yeah, that's low light. Yeah, I think the album would be like disc one would be perfect if you switched I Ain't Mad With Ya with California Love and the album California Love, and then get rid of like What's Your Phone Number. I think it plays so well, and like it ends on a really awesome, like energetic note. What do y'all think of Ambitionz as a writer though? Like
it's the best banger. It's the best beat. Yeah, it's like if Pac said nothing on that track and it was just that beat, it's like, that's like a highlight. It's like, and then Pac comes in, and then again, like that intro verse is just so prolific, and no one's been able to capture. I can imagine him walking out of jail and just saying these words, and you're like, fuck, like Superman's back. You know what I mean? Like there was a kryptonite moment there, but now it's like you got rid of the kryptonite, he's back, and he's back to dominate. It's just a perfect way to start an album.
Like, I mean, look at this verse. Like, he comes in and he says, so many battlefield scars while driven in plush cars. Life as a rap star is nothing without guard. Was born rough and rugged, addressing the mass public. My attitude is fuck it, because motherfuckers love it. To be a soldier, must maintain composure at ease. Though life is complicated, only what you make it to be. And this is the part that always gets me right here, because like the energy shift is so crazy. Then he goes, and my ambitions as a rider, to catch her while she hot and horny and go up inside her. Like that sounds like a guy who's been in jail for 18 months.
Yeah.
That's how he starts this out. The whole double disc. He's like, yes, this is what I want. Letting everybody know I'm back and time to get some pussy.
Yeah, and I'm fucking. I'm back and I'm fucking.
Right. That's what that shit is.
Also, this is a side note. This is what I wanted from a Justin Hunte guest appearance. It's just like you reading lyrics in your voice, in your amazing voice, and then like having the recurring thing like he was in prison for 18 years. Like, just, like weed through the episode.
It's the most important rhetorical element to this album to me. Because it is a very much an outlier in Pac's brief catalog. I mean, you can make an argument that Machiavelli had a lot of the same energy, but that was definitely more directed. Machiavelli, he's calling out names. On this one, he's just really like, first of all, I'm home. Time for everything to change. You know what I mean? And so, Ambitionz as a writer, man. I'm sorry. It's very easy for me. That's the one. If there's one song I could take with me for the rest of my life, is that one.
If it's also sonically sounds like he's back from the dead. Like I think like the Undertaker from like WWE, just like rising up, you know?
Yeah.
Just like, you thought you killed me? Nah, I'm still here.
Hell yeah. 1 second applause.
But yeah, like I think it also sets up the themes, the motifs, really, like cowards, enemies, fuck the police, like that, like, and yeah, but yeah, John, what's a highlight song for you?
Oh man, there's so many. Y'all were dogging What's Your Phone Number. I'm not gonna get into it just yet, but I want to shout out Danny Boy just because his presence across this whole project made it a lot for me. But it's I feel like there's a lot of partying going on this front, and this whole first disc is like singles after singles and bangers after bangers. I guess if I'm gonna pick one, I'm gonna go with a Nate Dogg track and just go ahead and do All About You, because
that's a great one.
I mean, Nate Dogg, the G-Funk sound, he is like, when you think of the pie chart, I'm gonna give 40%, 50% of the G-Funk sound to Nate Dogg himself, because his voice is butter. But it sounds like it's on that G shit. Like he's not on here with some Tevin Campbell, Johnny Gill, Keith Sweat vocals. No, he's also from the hood too and out in LA. But no, All About You is kind of like, okay, I'm back, but I'm settling in. It's just good time vibes, cookout vibes. Yeah, every other city we go. Like, come on, man.
I see the same. Oh, that's like area codes before, like
exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, there's a interesting personal story with this album. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on record. I can't remember ever doing it. But in I guess it's junior year of high school, we had to write. There was in our English class, we had a project where we had to write 3 poems. And I could only think of 2, and I was running out of time. So I took a verse from Only God Can Judge Me. And so I was like, man, Dr. Lockridge, she will not know that this is Tupac Shakur. Right. So I took the part where he goes, I see the doctor standing over me, screaming, I can make it. Got a body full of bullet holes laying here naked till I can't breathe. Something's evil in my IV. Because every time I breathe, they think it's killing me. I'm having nightmares, homicidal fantasies, right? So I took that part and I submitted it as if it was my own. And I got an A on the project. And then Dr. Lockridge was like, Justin, this is like really great. Like, this is so good. I didn't know you would you like to publish this in the school paper? Because I'm picking out the best ones. I want to do that. I'm like, no, Dr. Lockridge, no. I'm a very shy person. I don't want to share my art with anyone, but thank you. Thank you for the A, Dr. Lockridge. So shout out to Tupac for giving me an A.
That's good.
Not everything starts dope.
Right.
No, this is amazing. Yeah, that's my highlight song. Only God Can Judge Me. Because first of all, because it speaks so deeply to Justin Hunte experience. But like I love it's this is where I feel the Shakespeare influence that he has. Like I'm having nightmares, homicidal tendencies. I wake up strangling at my bed sheets of just like that. It doesn't feel like it's the way like Shakespeare writes, where it feels written, but it's dialogue too. It feels like he's talking to you as well. It feels like he's making these soliloquies public. In a way. I just think it's like, and I just love the avant-garde beat, like sampling the flat line, like in the middle of the song when he's like in the hospital and the robot talk box, and like, just like very vulnerable about like, dear mama, can you save me? And then like rapping Tay4 comes in and he's like, I feel you too. Like, I understand. And that's so beautiful. Like this, like he's not alone. Like this album, like the use of features is so like, it's so incredible. Like it feels like Academics, when the pop out show happened, he was like really salty and bitter, and he was like, oh, like Kendrick's not gonna invite all you guys onto the album. He's not gonna like have you all feature. Like this album feels like he like let them all have features basically. Like there's like a equalness to it. There's like a classlessness to it. Like they're all like obviously there's like the heavy hitters on the Got My Mind Made Up. Like those are the heavy hitters, but a lot of these songs are just like local art. Yeah, like local artists and stuff like that, and just like people I didn't know about. Like Storm particularly is a standout like throughout the whole album. Like that's yeah. So
but that's also
a lot of these guys are also in his group, the Outlaws.
Oh, okay.
But that also makes it feel very much of its time. It's kind of like, okay, we just cranked that out, but I think we need to, get a couple more verses on this. Who's here? Okay, you grab a verse. Okay, you can sing. All right, you hop on the chorus. It very much had like that, or at least sounds like it's got that collaborative. This is a kind of a melting pot right now of creativity, and we just got to bring all these tracks together. So that's one element just as a global note that I really appreciate about this album.
And it like makes it fun too. Yeah.
Yeah. Only God Can Judge Me. Like the part you were rapping a part, like right after that.
Rapping, like heavy italics.
You're right. Rapping with a G. Right. And so there's I do that. I do rapping with the G. That's the G
that's
in me.
Funny. I'm gonna start using that.
There's a line where he said that always really still resonates with me. Like sometimes just walking down the street, and definitely in my darkest times, I've thought about this. And he says, "Somebody help." He says, "How did it come to this? I wish they didn't miss." Like that really speaks to the fatalism that I feel he's carried for a long time. Like rather than struggle to recover, he wishes they didn't miss,
Yeah.
I mean, it's moments like that I think resonate past, with people of all populations. It's just so vivid. It speaks to the Shakespearean reference that you're making. I mean, it's a powerful couplet.
Yeah. And like it's all the things we're talking about, like these contradictions, the fun, the anger, the vulnerability, the fatalism, that makes this like more interesting than like that surface level. Like I wish it was more conscious, like that I was expressing early on, Yeah.
What's your favorite Kendrick Lamar album? Which one do you think?
Mr. Morale. Mr. Morale.
Mr. Morale. Okay. I felt like it was going to be Mr. Morale or To Pimp a Butterfly. Because those are like probably the more overtly conscious records. I'm a Damn fan, and I like his whole catalog clearly, but Damn is my favorite one, and for a lot of similar reasons as this one. You know what I mean? I think you described Damn well earlier. I think the storytelling's on point, but like I feel like a lot of times when I'm listening to things and I get closer to the artist's perspective, and it's just more aggressive or it's harder, it makes me connect with the emotion that they might have been coming from when they created it, So that's what I hear all over this album. It's like when he is mad, he is mad. When it's how do you want it, it really is how do you want it. You know what I mean? With Casey and JoJo in the club trying to smack bellies. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like he's really in control of his emotions on this.
Do we go? We heard from John. Did Stenley share a highlight?
No, I can share one. And it kind of speaks to what John was talking about earlier about, kind of saying like, we're going to pull in people here and there and like, oh, you sing this hook and you rap this. And I think like collectively, everyone was like, this means a lot. Like this album means a lot, in the creative process because it's Pac's album post jail and first album on Death Row. And I guess his last like official kind of album on Death Row, but for me, it's Two of America's Most Wanted is my highlight.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Just because, and again, what John mentioned earlier about like the connectivity, like how can you relate to something that you haven't experienced? Well, for us growing up, like hearing this song, like I can't relate to being like a murder charge, but I can relate to dancing to a sick track and hearing that sound and feeling like, yes, these are the two guys that I want to hear go back and forth on a track like this. And, I read that like a lot of this album was done kind of off the cuff, like where like a lot of just kind of, hey, we're going to go and vibe together. But Snoop was like, no, I need to actually write this verse out. So I'm going to go and take my time with it. I'm not going to do it the way that the album is crafted. And you could tell that Snoop knew also that this was a chance for him to almost like remind people of who he is. as one of the dopest MCs from the 90s, and to this day still someone that resonates. So to have these two together in this pure moment, like it's just phenomenal, and the sound is so great.
Well,
there's an interesting to that point. There's an interesting anecdote in the book. I'm telling you, anybody, since we're talking about it, Michael Namikis did his thing on this, right? And so he's talking about how during this process, other artists on death row were getting very upset at Tupac because he was dominating all the studio rooms, and he would just go from one room to another working on so many tracks. And so there were songs that were for other artists that ended up being on Tupac's album too, you know? So there's I really do wonder, you know, what the energy was like with everyone else. I mean, obviously, Pac was the priority for the whole company, right? But no one else could even get their ideas out. Like they couldn't even go record. You know, Pac was in there like, nope, my turn again. I'll take that. Thank you. You know what I mean? And so it's amazing that it came out so dope. I know everybody at this point in time has got to be like, yeah, that was worth it. It's good to be on this project.
You know, it's great that they reunited once again on TaylorMade Freestyle, like Tupac and Snoop. But
I love that
28
song.
years later.
I love it, right?
With such a fresh perspective on Kendrick's scenario.
Right. They were really focused on this kid, Kendrick. It's very interesting. They brought it back together. That's like the only Tupac and Snoop collabs we got, right? Like we got two of America's Most Wanted and TaylorMade Freestyle.
Thank goodness.
Oh.
That's funny.
Okay, so I want to talk briefly, this is straight observation. I want to talk about how do you want it, and the contextualizing of I like that he calls out Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, like the Democrat and the Republican. It's the same problem, basically. I think that's awesome and
very, very Chappell Roan of him, actually.
Right.
I think I need a little more context on Delores Tucker. I know she was super against gangster rap. I know she was a former civil rights leader at one point. But what's the story?
She was the voice of our parents' generation back then. Okay, so you know, in the 80s, 90s, probably early 2000s, maybe very early 2000s, late 70s, definitely. All our parents were in the civil rights movement, you know, and so they had Marvin Gaye was going on. That was their rebel music. You know, they had rock and roll growing up. That was their rebel music. And here come the 80s, and here comes gangster rap in all its forms, and all these rappers calling women bitches and hoes all over the place, right? And there was a lot of people who weren't happy about it. There was Delores Tucker. There was a guy named Calvin Butts. Calvin Butts went and bought a whole bunch. He was a pastor.
It's your dad, John, right?
Surprise.
Calvin, it could be your granddad. Could be your granddad. He bought a whole bunch of gangster rap CDs and put them on the ground in front of his church in Harlem. It was a very famous church in Harlem. And he steamrolled them with a bulldozer.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There's so much imagery of them destroying these CDs back then.
So Delores Tucker was one of them, right? And she was I think she was an elected official. Let me look at this real quick. I think she was a congresswoman. Delores Tucker, American politician and civil rights activist. Yeah, so she was a congresswoman at the time, right? And so she was not happy with nothing gangster rap. And so she would go in Congress and talk about how we need to ban gangster rap. I think she was part of the reason why the parental advisory sticker came. Don't quote me on that. I think she was though. I'm pretty sure she was in office, but I think she was part of where that came from, or one of the people speaking up about that. And so Tupac was squaring her crosshairs, obviously because of songs I Get Around and things like that, but just the level of disrespect for women and violent imagery and rap music. There was a lot of people in our parents' generation who looked at that as being destructive to the Black community. And honestly, at the core, yeah, I mean, if you got a whole bunch of people running around calling women bitches and hoes and all this stuff, that's going to have an effect in some capacity, right? This is generally speaking, this is a brand new thing to Black music. Now you have examples of Superfly and these pimp stories and Iceberg Slim and Blaxploitation films, sure, but not 100 times a day on the radio, everywhere you're going, you're hearing bitches and hoes or whatever. And so Delores Tucker was very upset. And so it was her and Calvin Butts and several other people who made it their mission to stop to fight gangster rap or misogyny in lyrics. And, in retrospect, whether they're correct or not, and I'm sure their hearts were in the right place. And I think that message still resonates today. I mean, I talk about a shift being needed all the time in the current marketplace, right? But I haven't seen anyone have success fighting the youth. I've never seen that. And we saw it again with Bill Cosby, right? Bill Cosby in the late 90s, 2000s, he became very critical of young black men. Very critical. He's always talking about people sagging their pants and talking about how, they weren't educated and they weren't doing anything good for society. They weren't living up to the example that they set during the civil rights movement. So Bill Cosby became one of those, voices, C. Delores Tucker-esque voices. And so when Bill Cosby got in trouble, black men were like, dang, dog, it's messed up. Sorry to see you. It's like when Tiger Woods said he wasn't black, right? He said it was combination. Then he gets arrested. Yeah, this looks like combination problems. Sorry, right? And so I've never seen people be able to attack the youth to spark the change that they wanted. And that reference on this project when it comes to Tupac was, there's no parts of me at his core didn't understand what she was saying. He didn't like the way that she was, and other people were essentially throwing out the youth, targeting the youth for these things that are much bigger issues, much bigger patterns in the community than what's coming through their microphones.
The blaming the youth is such a, I think that's the problem. The misogyny in rap needs to be dealt with, but pinning it all on Tupac, that's not all his issue. And especially the way he's talked about women in the prior albums, very compassionately, very empathetically.
Well, he also made I Get Around, he was a complicated, person, but she was going after anybody who even got over there. Mm-hmm. She wasn't, that was the problem with her approach, in my opinion, from my perspective, rather than target the youth and point a finger at these bad kids over here, these bad little niggas over here doing all this crazy shit, right? There was an opportunity to highlight Will Smith or highlight whoever you thought was doing a better job. There's always an opportunity to show the example that you would like people to replicate, as opposed to villainize people who are really the products of your community. Mm-hmm. They're a product of your exploits to one degree or another. Where was Delores Tucker? She New York? Let me see where she at. She was Pennsylvania, right? Every one of these communities had a drug epidemic. They had one in there. They had the heroin epidemic and things like that they had to go through in the civil rights, era. So they know at the core where this stuff is coming from. They know that the community was ravaged by drugs and absentee fathers and targeted prison system and CIA putting crack cocaine. They know these things. And their choice was to attack the youth for their language. And, maybe she got reelected, maybe she got some votes or whatever, maybe she got some money because her base is really people who also disagree with that. But I don't think that. I think it's very clear that whatever impact she had on the youth drove them more in that other direction. Mm-hmm. And I just don't see attacking the youth for their choices and their styles as being the best way to convince them not to do something. I've been a kid before. As soon as my mom told me I couldn't do something, I wanted to do that thing more than anything else in the world. When it was bedtime, I was like, bedtime, I can't wait to just see what midnight looks like. One day I'm going to see what midnight looks like. And I stayed up one time to midnight on my own. I was like, oh, okay, I made it. Because nothing was happening anyway. Once you start vilifying your own community, I don't see how you're able to spark the change that you want to see. And Pac understood that.
Any other stray observations on disc 1? Anything you just want to shout out before we get to disc 2?
I'll quickly mention Life Goes On. For me,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I really like Life Goes On. I'm the type of person that likes the introspection, and it almost gave me a chance to breathe, to be honest, because it just hits so hard. This album hits so good and so hard at the beginning, and Life Goes On was almost like a moment where you remember that there's always the hope of the next day. Yeah. And so for Pac to remind you of that on this album, I think was a really big highlight.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah.
For me, another one is Got My Mind Made Up, obviously, with Redman, Method Man, Spectre Deck, Daz Dillinger. The East Coast, West Coast beef is all around this, all around this album. And this song always stands out as a reminder to me that the East Coast, West Coast beef was more of a media manufactured altercation than it was as how the artists felt themselves at this point in time, right? Because, this album was made after Pac got out of jail. It wasn't like there was old tracks sitting around with Method Man and Redman and Inspect the Deck on there that they just threw on the album. These are relationships that they had. These are two of the biggest East Coast guys, three of the biggest guys on the East Coast. Daz is from Philly too. So, I mean, he's definitely West Coast, and so those collaborations, like Method Man is on Biggie's Ready to Die. You know what I mean? And so Meth is on both those albums. So to me, this is an example of how it wasn't East Coast, West Coast. It wasn't cut and dry, we don't rock with y'all because y'all on the other coast. It was whatever friction, whatever happened at Quad City Studios with Tupac and Biggie and Haitian Jack and Puff Daddy, whatever, right? It was that situation being branded as East Coast, West Coast by the most prominent media publications at the time that created this narrative that everybody over here didn't rock with anybody over there. And in the middle of all that, you have this song on this album with, two of the biggest Redman had G-Funk. Redman was pulling folk samples before Dr. Dre, by the way, on What the Album. Let's just get that on record. But you have the biggest three Wu-Tang members, the biggest collective at the time on Tupac's album. And it's just one of my favorite songs in general, but I think it's also a touch point for that time period.
Yeah, I mean, the way you frame it, and it goes back to what you were talking with Delores Tucker, because ultimately it's about the commodification of a culture. There's pop music, country music, rock and roll. Also was kind of commodified, but really hip hop culture is what sells. And back then, what these industries and record companies did was they utilized, like you said, an isolated moment, and we're like, oh, how can we commodify that? Well, let's brand it as East Coast, West Coast, and then it's like pick a side. They were playing sports now, but then what made it even more almost memorable as East Coast, West Coast is that the two biggest artists died. Right, as a somewhat of a result of all of this. Like Biggie, Pac died, and dies going, right?
Right, and both the executives are in prison right now.
Yes, yeah.
They're both, the two main artists are dead, and the two executives are in prison.
Insane.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
It's wild, right?
Jesus Christ.
And Big went to LA to kind of say, listen, I love LA.
That was crazy. In retrospect,
yeah.
For this person, in retrospect, whatever reason he went out there to sell whatever records, to do whatever media tour, that's malpractice to me. That's just malpractice. And there's no part of me that doesn't think Biggie or Diddy were aware of West Coast culture. Generally speaking, whenever there's conflicts like this, someone doesn't get the memo, and it's usually the streets. Usually it's just the streets. Right. So in that climate, after Pac already died, you're going out to LA to an award show and a press run in person. You couldn't make a long distance call into K-Day. To me, that's malpractice. That's one of those things that sparks a lot of the conspiracy around it, around Biggie. When people say these things that can't be verified about Puff making a sacrifice to blow up and his Biggie, it's because why? On what planet would you take that risk? Why would you take that risk? Yeah, regardless if they had nothing to do with it at all, you're just going to trust random gang members in LA, and you're going to be public and forward face. Like there's stories about them just going to the mall. And like they did a radio interview. They went to the mall. They went to the like they're outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I just look at that whole thing as so unfortunate. And to me, it looks like malpractice. I'm not at the point where I'll say that, oh, he had to sacrifice. That's been a thing that happens forever. But I just don't. I was in South Carolina at that time, and I understood the climate. We all understood that, something might happen to Biggie. After Pac died, everybody was like, man, I hope they don't get Biggie. Because we were all under that banner, that energy of East Coast versus West Coast. That's what the overall temperature was.
Yeah.
So let's move on to disc 2. Justin, what's
the fun disc? The fun disc.
Yeah. On that note,
all right, time to get drunk and go to the party, guys.
Yes.
I mean, I think George Clinton he sets it off on the second one.
That's my number 1 too. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't See Me. It's like, I mean, both these discs really start off capturing the energy of what they represent.
Yes.
Right? And Can't See Me, You Can't See Me. That sounds like a guy who got shot 5 times, went to jail, got out, and is in the middle of and halfway done making one of the top selling rap records of all time. You Can't See Me. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Dancing at the scene of the crime, like I'm still in this motherfucker.
Yeah.
He uses like features the way Kanye does. I think Kanye got this use of features from Tupac. So he'll have he'll have like his contemporaries. He'll have like young fellas, and then he'll have like some left like out of left field choice. And like then you kind of see like, oh wow, like the G-Funk sound is very influenced by Funkadelic. It is very influenced by this and this, and like paying respect to his elders as well, and like just making weird sounds. I love the tuba in this song. Like it's very cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's super incredibly well produced.
It's that Dre production on that one, I think.
I mean, I think so. It should be, especially if George Clinton's on it. Dude, I got this one, guys. Don't worry. Come on, George.
Yeah.
That's a great moment. It starts off strong, and then Shorty Want to Be a Thug. Like that's another one of those conscious songs. To be honest with you, like I grew up in the middle class and suburbs too, John, and like. That song resonated with me. Growing up, I was like, he was a nice middle class nigga, but no one knew the evil he do when he got a little bigger. You know what I mean? I knew kids like that. There was a bunch of like, especially my parents' friends' kids. There was a half of them were like, I think taking a lot of stuff too literally. In my opinion, they were taking it too literally. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they were pump faking. They weren't faking, and that was the problem. You know what I'm saying? So. But that song right there is another great moment. And I think it also really shows the dichotomy of like the Black experience really well, right? Because we have this idea that if you don't grow up in the hood, if you grow up in the hood, you're harder than if you don't grow up in the hood. And I think generally speaking, we understand where that connotation comes from. But the flip side of that a lot of times makes people feel like if you grew up in the suburbs, then you're soft. Like that's not the case either. Now, you can have people who are like chasing acceptance one way or the other. And in this case, he's using middle class, as in my opinion, as a differentiator from people who grow up, in a gang environment or who grow up, as part of a community, gang-ridden community. Here's someone who had the option and wanted to go over to that other side. And it's a great cautionary tale, I think, at the second song on the second disc, right? We've gone through all the Ambitionz Az a Ridah and Riding All of My Enemies and 2 of America's Most Wanteds and all that stuff on the first disc. You Can't See Me, first of all, but really, let's make sure that, we understand that, this situation over here is something that people exist and live through too. So, Shorty Want to Be a Thug is a great, that's a great, 1-2 on the second disc, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Drive Slow Part 1 for me because of that sample, that doom doom doom, and I'm like, oh, I've heard this somewhere before. I'm like, oh shit, I thought that Ye was the best version of that sample, but this right here is like it's the OG version of it. It's just right away, that bass line just gets me. So for that alone, I love this track. Yeah, it's really good.
I feel like I had that as like a ringtone at one point, like the Shorty Wanna Be a Thug, the beginning of it. And I think that speaks to just like how much it resonates. It's just like I'm just a young little dude and I'm not trying to thug, but like I'm a shorty, so ringtone.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also funny too because Pac wasn't, he was raised in, he went to like art school and stuff like that. You know, and then he became the leader of Thug Life. Maybe with a different connotation, but he went out on some Thug Life behavior.
For me, another highlight is All Eyez On Me. I mean, just that again, that sample. I mean, Nas did that as well, but this one works really well. And Pac, like, I was listening to a podcast, they were talking about this album, and they're saying how like Pac doesn't always like ride that beat. Like it's almost like he like ignores the pocket, and that's what makes it so great. And his voice is so memorable. But like some rap, again, like the compared to Big, like Big is like it's just butter. It's always spread out perfectly. But Pac doesn't always do that. And here I feel like he's like slightly off the beat, but it's perfect. Like it's like he decides to create a new pocket and says, hey, y'all either fucks with this or not, but this is where I'm going to be. And the song will catch up and you'll catch up eventually. And it hits,
Yeah.
You're saying that a podcaster on Pac said that Pac ignored the pocket?
Yes.
Okay, that's insane.
And was eating a pizza pocket while ignoring said pocket. Yeah.
I got some pizza pockets in the fridge right now.
There you go.
1 second to pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean, that song is.
Thank you.
This is a great song. I'm really having a good time with this podcast too. The thing about this album title is it was originally called Euthanasia. And so that was going to be the original title of the album. And he changed it to All Eyez On Me. And I think that was Suge's idea because obviously when he got out of prison, he had all his haters was riding on him. He had homies that still rocked with him. He had all these women who were mad at him because of the court case. He had all these women that still loved him. He had the media that was all over the place when they were covering him. And he just at the time felt like all eyes were on me. And so Sugar was like, all eyes on you. You should call it All Eyez On Me. And so that is where the title came from. And I think that title track really holds up. All eyes on me, living life as a thug nigga till the day I die. Living life as a boss player. See the demon, not see the demon in mind, whatever he says at the end. But like, it's it's nuggets like that that really drive my passion for just covering culture in general. Like, where does that come from? The anthropological elements of this genre, this culture, just us as a people, and particularly how it all plays out on this album. Because I think this album really is a great time stamp for one of the most pivotal times in music history. I mean, even 1996, you had the Telecommunications Act that passed. When he said Bill Clinton, Mr. Bob Dole, well, Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act. So all the stuff that we got, the lack of media options, like when there's only 3 record labels left, there's only 3 radio stations left, everything's owned by 3-4 companies. Well, that happened this same year this dropped. You know what I'm saying?
Man. Jon, what's a highlight for you?
I'm kind of still going down the track list here, and I just land right at Holla At Me. There's like an urgency to that song, and like his delivery, and like the fire in his eyes or behind his delivery is just like undeniable to me. And it's unfortunate, like the perspective on that song, but that's one I just kind of have to turn that dial up and just like really tap into. And that R&B background vocals, like echoing what you better be where you stay. You better not find where you stay. Like, all of that is just, it's so cinematic, but and so grandiose. Yeah. Holla at me.
Yeah. There's a song on here called Checkout Time. It's a really good song, but the time when I was listening to it, this was one of the moments on the second disc that The second disc really had to grow with me. I had to grow into life to really relate to the second disc a lot more because my parties, had like chocolate cake and like, chaperones and things at that point in time. But Checkout Time was one of those ones. Like the song is about like, okay, you had the party and now it's time to check out the hotel. Like I was playing Super Mario World. I couldn't relate. I was like, give me the Ambitionz of a Ridah thing real quick. Okay, let's go back to that.
Yeah, I'm still having my chocolate cake and chaperone parties, by the way. Like I'm still there.
Okay, you still got chaperones. That's what's up. Hey, shout out to chaperones. 1 second applause.
Any stray observations or lowlights of the entire album? Like anything you just want to say, or anything that was like unsavory that you didn't like?
I just didn't like the beat on what's your phone number. Like it's a little jarring for me. Like
that gives me so much energy, and honestly, I don't like the subject matter of that. But that beat is to me is so unorthodox. It's like, wait, what's happening on here? Yeah. I don't know. That's my only pushback.
It really is, though.
Justin.
But that's to me is like it's unorthodox. What is happening on here? Actually, should this be on here? That's like the thought I have like right after it. You know what I'm saying? Like we go through the rest of this production on this album, which is one of the most immaculately produced albums that we've just discussed, has held up over the past 30 years. Sonically held up over the past 30 years. You got Devontae Swing and on this joint, like of No More Pain. You've got freaking Rick Rock and Mike Mosley. You got Dre on this, you know what I'm saying? You've got QD3 with Heaven Ain't Hard to Find, which is another great conscious moment that's on this album, by the way. And then over here, you've got all these other really solid Johnny J produced tracks. Everything just feels like it goes together so well. And then stamped at the end, 14th track on disc 1, which is 70 minutes long, by the way, 70 minutes long. They got this one song, and you and I have the same exact reaction, even though we feel differently about it. You like it because it's weird and jarring and odd and what's going on. And I don't like it because it's weird and jarring and odd and what's going on. So I think they knew what they were doing because they put that at the end of the disc. They were like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's see where we can go. I just got out of jail. Let's prepare people for what might come in the future.
My low light on the album is like sometimes like I guess like the point of some of these songs is just like to drive in your car and enjoy it and like kind of vibe out to the energy, but sometimes like it feels like they're like trying to reach like a time, like not just like as many songs as possible, but like reach a time stamp too. Like it has to be over 5 minutes. Every song has to be over 5 minutes. So it's like him talking at the beginning, like, all right, turn up the piano over here. And then at the end, it's just him talking at the end, like, well, that was a song you listened to. It's like I was in
it's funny.
like, but
I feel you. I see what you're saying. Keep going, keep cooking.
Well, thank you. But like, it reminds me of like when I was like teaching English, like, so I had a part-time job teaching English to like Chinese students. So I'd wake up at 6 a.m. and like, just like go through like a lesson plan of like some English and like some child and his parent were like learning English with me basically. And sometimes I was like so tired at 6 a.m. that I'd finish in 15 minutes. So I just had to like go around and like show the child things and like soda, just like build for time, just like trying to like yeah, I think that's how I feel about some of these songs.
I mean, like, possibly, right? I mean, they did have a plan. Like he was trying to break the Guinness Book of World Records. You know, that was something that was on his mind. You know, he had a lot of thoughts that obviously. He was just spilling things out after sitting down so long, not being able to make music, you know. And from a putting the album together standpoint, Suge won a lot of these. Suge won a lot of these songs, you know. Like that's what the Tupac Encyclopedia was telling me about. Shout out to Michael Nemikis, the Tupac Encyclopedia Volume 1.
All right, I'm buying it. I'm gonna buy it.
Is there Volume 2 also? Like,
not yet. He's working on it.
Nah, okay. Because like, I
mean, just really. I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but really think about the life of someone who. This is the Tupac Encyclopedia Volume 1, and Tupac died at 25.
Oh,
yes. Wow.
This is based on his output. his output, like the things he created. Look at this. This is a college course.
Well, can I ask you real quick?
Volume 1.
What's the font size? Because that actually could influence
college course.
Okay, it's legit. Okay, it's past the font test.
Look at that.
Look at this.
For the audio listeners, I'd say that's about a 12-point font. With
if that. It might be 10.
10 or 11,
yeah, it might be 10 or 11. It might be. You know what I mean? And so, they wanted to create just a massive body of work with this project. And whether or not they were as efficient on the second half, if you think about the context of a lot of the songs, I think about the second half being more the party songs than the first half, right? And so that is really good, like smoke and ride, long time. You don't have to, you put the CD on, you don't have to you don't have to press skip, you just kind of vibing a whole lot, you got someone just sort of emceeing and not necessarily rapping, or someone who's just like radio DJing for you, know what I mean?
Do this out the window, do this motion, like just like
Yeah, that's what it is,
I think it's the Frank Ocean trick, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'll give you an album, wink, wink. And I think like with Pac trying to break a record, but also trying to get out of his record deal. I think the first disc is the album, and then the second one, it's like you said, like it's a party. We'll give you a couple of like hits, but ultimately, I can just sell it that way, make more money, also get out of my deal quicker, also let Suge get what he wants,
right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean, but not really get to touch the real album, which is that first disc. So I think it's genius. My low light is California Love, the remix. Like there's no more disappointing moment than hearing like California Love, and then it's some weird shit. You're like, what is this?
That's that Roger Troutman right there.
That I wasn't messing with that remix. So for me, that was a little light.
But sometimes they do that. Like my original version of East 99 Eternal by Bone Thugs-n-Harmony, which is my favorite album of all time. Right?
No way.
Still is. I mean, that album it's about nothing but murder and marijuana, and it's amazing, right? And they don't go on any dates. There's no women. They're not smacking bellies. Like you never hear about their parents or what their life is like. There's just murder and marijuana for like 17 tracks, and it's so diverse. It's hard to believe. But like the Crossroads, everyone knows like the Crossroads. Well, that's really the remix or the remake of the Crossroads, like the one that, and I Miss My Uncle Charles Crossroads, like
yeah.
The original is a totally different version.
No way,
it's a completely different song. And so my version, because I still have the original one and I have the tape, right? Because I had to buy it twice because I had a tape player, then I got a CD player, and that was my favorite album, so I had to go buy it again, right?
Yeah.
So that one has a totally different Crossroads. So when people say Crossroads, my first thought isn't I Miss My Uncle Charles Crossroads.
No,
See you at the Crossroads. My original thought is their original Crossroads that's on the CD. Now, I know that people mean the other Crossroads because almost nobody, unless you were in that era, that generation around that time when that CD came out, you probably have no idea that this other song even exists. Especially because the second Crossroads is so big. It's so massive.
So big.
Right? So, I don't know. I got to take a look at this again. Maybe it's one of those moments where I'm just like, stop thinking about this for so long.
I think it's that Roger Troutman ending that
I think
kind of his riffing at the end, which I'm saying, hey, maybe we need to bring the talk box back. Like,
yeah, I think that's what I think that's what that is. I think it's the riffing at the end is probably the remix, but you're saying it's a whole nother song, so it's like, oh well.
Yeah, again, same lyrics, but just like the whole production is different.
Yeah, but this album definitely sparked a wave of double disc. It's not the first double disc, but it's the one that people think about.
What I read somewhere, it's the first double disc with only original music, like all new music, apparently. So you definitely started away from that perspective as well, right? Like, which I think is a bit of a low light because like then you got too many double disc albums that were not near as good quality as this. And it was just flooding the market with too much product.
Mm-hmm.
That was a thing, right? Well, no, they're saying he's the DJ, I'm the rapper is the first double album in hip hop, which sounds really weird to me thinking about it like that. But yeah, I mean, everybody's thought they could do it.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that stands out about this album. I am a firm believer Disc 1 is much better than Disc 2, but Disc 2 isn't bad. You know, disc 2 isn't. It's just that the conversations are more narrow on disc 2 than disc 1, in my opinion, right? And so that made everybody think they could do that, and everybody should do that.
No,
and everybody don't need to be doing no 28 song, 2.5 hour open. No, we don't need that.
Like even Jay-Z had to be like, oh shit, I should have done like a Blueprint 1.5.
That's what he did, right?
You know, like,
he
and he did
hedged
it.
all his bets. But I think also too, it became like, it's like when you're a comedian, you're a good stand-up comedian. Then after that, you get your comedian package. You know, you get like your TV show that you host, you get your book deal, and you get your movie, right? You know, that's like your steps of success if you're a comedian, right? And so at this point in time, it's like, okay, oh man, we made it. Now we got to do the double disc.
Yes.
Time to do a double disc now. Yeah, because Bone Thugs did one. Crazy Bone did one on his own, which I don't think he should have done that either. Biggie did one. Jay-Z did one. Nas did one.
DMX did one.
DMX did one. Like everybody big at that point in time was like, oh, we got to do a double disc, you know.
Outkast probably the best one. Like probably.
Yeah, without question. Yeah, but that was almost
like solo projects.
But they were solo projects.
Yes. They're two separate albums.
Yes.
They just put them in the same label. I mean, you know, that's the only rap album. And then we can say it's a rap album because it's 51% rap, but it's the only rap album that like has ever won best album at the Grammys, album of the year at the Grammys.
Yeah.
You know, Lauryn Hill's album is a hip hop album. I don't think about it as a rap album. Like it is like there's more singing than rapping on it. Like you could be hip hop and not rap. You know, we have this view. Like I was looking at Tommy Richmond the other day.
Yeah,
I'm not a hip hop artist.
Yeah,
actually, I am. Well, so you know, I'm not a hip hop artist. I sing. Dog, Mary J. Blige's been singing her ass off. She hip hop to the core. Nate Dogg been singing all these sings exclusively. He's hip hop all day, you know. And so that's where I put Lauryn Hill's album. I think it's a phenomenal. It's probably arguably the best hip hop album ever made. It's too bad that she lied about being the only person that made it. That really bothers me, and I think it really impacted her. The level of respect that she's had over her career, because she can't even perform those songs live when she performs live because of the lawsuit she lost. So she has to do these weird, wacky renditions that no one really enjoys. But if you take that album as like a rap album, I'm like, dog, I mean, is she rapping 51% of the time?
Right.
Is she mostly rapping? I got a lot of hot verses from her on that, but is she mostly rapping? I don't think so.
Yeah, like any more things? John, do you have any?
Interesting.
Yeah, this is a fantastic conversation. Like, John, you got anything you want to share? Or
no, I feel like we kind of hit all the lowlights. I mean, this album and Tupac himself, obviously larger than life, and you know, if you don't get that book, you might not know all the intricacies. So get the book.
He's talking about this book right here. Michael Namikis, Namikas. Michael Namikis, the Tupac Encyclopedia, Volume 1. It's a great party. It's a great book to have around at a party. You know, it's like if you want to play a party game, guess the Tupac fact. Oh, I'll open up right here. Random Tupac fact. DJ Pooh. DJ Pooh worked with Tupac. DJ Pooh was born Mark Jordan in Los Angeles, California on June 29th, 1969. That's what you learn about.
Wow.
And he's got a whole bunch of paragraphs in it.
Andrew, new idea, Andrew. I've been meaning to read that featuring the one, only Volume 1. Tupac Encyclopedia.
You got to read it. I mean, I haven't made it all the way through yet, but I've referenced this book all the time. You know, it is like, it's alphabetized based on the people, songs, moments, movies in Tupac's career, right? Life and career. So it's alphabetized, right? So that's why it's the encyclopedia. But there's tons of times. I did a series of interviews and pieces on gosh, oh my God, guys, I've been thinking all day. I can't even remember what I'm talking about. DOC. There we go. So a series of pieces on DOC. And I looked at the Tupac Encyclopedia to see what kind of stuff I might have missed around Tupac and DOC. And there was a couple of nuggets in there that ended up in a conversation that led to some viral moments. So, you know, it's actually it's a really good book. It's a good resource to have around.
Two observations I want to share is, like the Black Panthers is seen by white people as like a terrorist group. But the
Not
whole
even
thing,
just Martin Luther King was a terrorist to white people. Okay.
yeah.
Now they tell us to be more like him, as if we don't remember they shot him.
Yeah.
It's facts.
Ugh. Yeah, bars on that. But like I like why did I say that? Bars on that.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
I just wanted to punctuate what you said in agreement.
oh, okay. No, my bad. I must have missed that part. My bad. I thought you were talking about leaving the conversation.
Yeah. So like, but it's like but I think the idea is like self-defense against like a government, against like, they were like walking around with guns and stuff like that. And like people like the Second Amendment, like Professor Skye had the point, like Second Amendment people didn't want, that's the one people they didn't want to like to have guns. Like
right.
who are like
people with a point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They were also feeding like the community too. They had like a program that kids could, before school go and get breakfast so you could have energy for your brain to function during the day.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And so I think like a lot of this, the aggression and the anger is a means of self-defense on some level too, to survive. And like, especially post prison, especially post, one, to like, make arts, but two, to, I think that was the shift that was happening. So it was like, in actuality, it wasn't really a regression. It's just like a full circle moment of like, this is what it's all about in a way.
Yeah. It's another side of them. You know, like we're all a product of a ton of different experiences, right? There's amazing.
We didn't just fall out of coconut trees.
Right. We're a product of amazing successes and, devastating failures and loving moments and moments of abandonment and, the point of views of our educators and the perspective of our parents, right? And so that series of circumstances gave us another perspective on Pac. Now, whether or not, what was his name? De La Soul. De La Soul had that song, Ego Trip, right? I think Ego Trip in the video, they were part of the friction between De La Soul and Tupac was Tupac felt like De La Soul was mocking him for being a fake gangster living in a big house and around all these women and stuff. And, it's unfortunate that happened between those two because, those are two of my favorite acts ever, De La Soul and Tupac. But like, that's all part of the brilliance of Pac was his ability to lean into the dichotomy of his life. Like as a creative, I'm working on that more every day. Like I probably spent, when I write about my mom passed away 2 years ago. So I started putting my personal life in my stuff since then. So probably like 10 years of my life. And the means of being a journalist and the means of sticking to all these things, I would keep my personal life out of my work. I have a byline called The Company Man back in the era where everyone had aliases. So there was a professional distance I always wanted to keep between my perspective and who I was as a person. And I no longer do that anymore. Like, okay, I think I've done that enough, right? Because at this point, I think more than anything else, one, the power of a person is truly what moves mountains, right? Like, a person can galvanize people who can do incredible things. Two, I feel like the people that I admire the most, or the voices I think matter the most to me and that I care about, I tend to know a lot about them. Like Ta-Nehisi Coates is my favorite writer. He has a book called Between the World and Me, and it's a letter to his son. You know what I'm saying? Like, and also it's very uncomfortable for me. It's very challenging for me to be open about my life and where I've lived and who I'm from a number of different reasons. It just doesn't feel natural. I'm over here talking about what I see, not me. Like it's a very different thing. And I need those kind of challenges, to be honest. I don't think I'll be able to truly understand and commiserate with the experience of having people critique and criticize you for your art and your perspective when you're being vulnerable to yourself, if I never truly do that, it's very difficult for me to say, oh my God, Tupac said too much, or or Outkast said too little, or whatever. If I don't share at all, that means I can't even relate to what it feels like to open up. And at the core of my view of what I love about contextualizing culture, at the core of it is trying to commiserate with the experiences of others in one way or another. And I look at this album and understand, all the, how the media covered it and how people, especially how it resonates like all these years down the line. And I really appreciate it for the fact that it really is another side of Pac that I don't feel like is disingenuous to what he was experiencing, feeling emotionally, personally, privately. And I'm really appreciate the fact that he was brave enough to say it out as loudly and bombastically as he did. He has the voice of God. It reverberates like Chuck D. And I still think he wielded it largely, his powers, for good.
Wow. Yeah, let's I think there's no stronger point than that, to conclude on. But let's go through final thoughts and ratings. The way this works is we'll rate this album out of 10 with a fun metric at the end. Justin, just to continue off of what you built there, how would you rate this album? Rate in
10 out of 10. Classic.
Wow.
Right. And here's what I say. It's not a perfect album. It is not a perfect album. There's a significant difference between a perfect album and a classic album. A perfect album is flawless, right? They hit all the right notes, all the right production, the rhymes or whatever. And this isn't something that's necessarily, it obviously is a personal connection that people have to music, but a perfect album doesn't necessarily have to be classic. There's a Killer Mike's album, Michael, just won a Grammy for best rap album. There's a lot of people who might view that as a perfect album. I don't think it's a classic album, but it's an amazing album, whatever it is. A classic album can be classic with its imperfections, including the things we don't like about it. It can still be classic, including the songs that we skip. It can still be classic. Now, don't get me wrong. It's hard to have a pretty terrible album that's classic. If you're shooting 2 out of 5, if you shoot 4 out of 10, I don't know if you're gonna get that classic stamp, regardless of whatever it is. But Bone Thugs and Harmony, East 99 to me is a classic album. The example of a classic album that is far from perfect. So again, it's a whole album about murder and marijuana. Okay, the things I generally like about life. At that point in time, when I was listening to that album, none of them were on the album because I wasn't into murder or marijuana at that point in time.
How come they're not talking about Super Mario?
Right, exactly. Or at least, do they have a girlfriend? Do they go out, do they like women or anything? I can't even tell. There's not even bitches and hoes flowing through right there. At least I get to hear some jarring. But what it represented for the Midwest, what it represented for that particular style of rapping, if you look at the influence of rapping and R&B and singing, you get Justin Timberlake and Nelly Furtado stole the whole swag, and pretty much all this auto-tune stuff to me is really trying to be Bone Thugs and Harmony. It is classic, it's influential, and you take a song like First of the Month, you take a song like East 99, you take a song like Crossroads, and it defines an era, right? And that's what this album, Tupac, All Eyez On Me, the touch points with, calling out politicians at a point of consolidation in the media space. You have him getting out of jail after 18 months of being in prison and mad at the world, and he's letting out his emotions. And you take these massive songs, one of which became the soundtrack for the state of California. And you look at the shadow of the East Coast, West Coast beef and remember that Method Man, Redman, and Inspector Deck are on it. You have a classic album that is amazingly and leading into its imperfections. And so I give it a 10 out of 10 in that regard.
Yeah.
Damn,
that's perfect. I think part of my disconnect with some of the stuff we were talking, the listening experience of it, was first of all the length. Just I'm not used to listening to a 2 hour and 12-minute album.
Right.
That's real. That was
you're not.
I know. That was a real challenge for me. And just especially trying to talk about it a little bit. That was obviously I should go into listen more than to speak. But so I was just taking it in. It was a lot of and then the expectation of man, I heard these like I heard these really deep things he said, and I wish there was a little more of that. And this felt like a step down from what I wanted or what I'd want like the final statement of Tupac, like the living Tupac to be. Um, and then there's also like I wasn't there for it. You know, my dad, he talks a lot about like Michael Jordan, the run he had, you know, when he was at his peak. I wasn't there for it. I was
Right.
like Tyler the Creator has like, no, Tupac's not in my top 5. Like I didn't have pubes yet. Like he's like talking about
Right.
that. So
Great
like,
point.
yeah, like he's not in my top 5 because I wasn't there for it. And I like, you know, and I've seen all the artists that come after that are clearly influenced by him. That said, I love having this. I love these future artists being contextualized through studying this. I love having this moment be contextualized by you, Justin, and Stenley and Jon. And I love this conversation. So I thought this is a fantastic experience. So I'll give this 7 Rottweilers by my bed that I fed lead. So,
I love that. 7 Rottweilers by my bed that I fed. I like that.
I think, I mean, Justin, your explanation of what classic is has changed how I see this, because I, coming into this, didn't really label this as a classic. For me, it's a bit too long. There's too much material that is either repetitive or doesn't hit the highest note that Tupac has set on this album. Like the highs are so high that there are moments where you're just kind of like, I don't know if they soar at the same level. So, but culturally, I think Tupac is, again, like he's the beacon. Like he is, you know, the call out to everyone. He's the Optimus Prime that's telling everybody, hey, come to this planet. Autobots, like, let's all unite on planet Earth and let's see if we can create a new Cybertron here, you know, and not everyone's going to make it to planet Earth, but those who do and those who did got a chance to really interact with one of the leaders. And so I want to give Pac a 10 out of 10, but I'll give this album 8 volumes of the Tupac Encyclopedia coming soon out of 10.
Word up.
wow. Okay, where are you at, Jon?
My attitude is fuck it because motherfuckers love it.
Right.
I think that is it. This album is so urgent. It's unfiltered. It's got a lot of pent up things that need to be reconciled. It is a FU to the media. It is a FU to the politicians. It is also a celebration. It is looping in people to be a part of the experience. Sonically undeniable, even in some of the areas where maybe the track goes on a little bit or there's like more kind of interlude like dialogue. I think this is, you take this for what it is, then you're really in Pac's world at this time. And I think that immediately gets it that classic status. I can dock it just a little bit for some of those elements that don't kind of hold up in present day, but I'm not going to dock it too much. This one was in my CD player when I was on the bus when I was 15. You know what I mean? This is a mainstay for me. So I'm going to give this 9.5 G-Funk synth notes on the whatever the G-Funk scale is.
Right. I thought you were gonna say 9.5 G-Funk eras.
Yeah.
That too.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Well, that was our review of All Eyez on Me by Tupac. This is what a lovely time to hear you wax poetic and personal, Justin. The thing you said about I don't reconcile Tupac is so important and so awesome. Like obviously there should be some like for yourself, like reconciling yourself of like all these contradictions within yourself and like therapy or whatever. But an artist, you know, like someone trying to reconcile that, I think there should be some freedom to like not do that all the time, you know, and just like let the person be an artist, let the person be a human being and stuff. So I think that's a really awesome perspective that I'll carry with the rest of the show. Yeah, thank you so much, Justin. This is what a lovely time. What would you like to plug? What's out there for you?
The Company Man YouTube is all happening. Let's see what else. I mean, that's really my focus right now, more than anything else. I consult for a number of different artists. I have a couple of shows in development right now. We'll see where those goes. I don't want to talk about those too much, but that's happening as well. And honestly, I just really have a lot of thankfulness and appreciation for just all the people who show me so much support and look to me to contextualize the news, and all the people even on the industry side who supported my work over the years. And a lot of times you don't really get a chance to this journey into journalism one way or the other, whether it's old school journalism where you were just in a newspaper or a magazine, or it's blog era YouTube stuff. It's really difficult to see the impact your stuff is actually happening. A lot of times you're just talking about stuff or reporting stuff, and you're not sure how much it means to people and whether or not, how much it actually means to you, because it's like, it could get really dark when you're writing stuff and nobody's reading it. It could get dark making a podcast nobody's listening to. It could get dark making a video nobody's watching. And, I've been blessed and fortunate enough to have been able to keep my passion for it through a lot of tough times. And this year, I've been shown more love and appreciation than I ever have. And so I'm just leaning into all the positive energy, and I'm super invigorated by my work. And I just have a sincere gratitude for everyone who's ever, felt anything that I've ever said. I really appreciate you guys.
Of course. Any books you've been reading or been trying to get through?
Tupac Encyclopedia Volume 1. No, actually,
by who?
By Michael Nemikis.
Okay. Gotta make sure.
Okay. No, actually, I'm really excited because I just copped The Message. Is it The Message or Messenger? The Messenger by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And he's my favorite writer. So his new book just came out October 1st. I got it in the mail about 20 pages in or so. And he, like, my Mount Rushmore of rap journalists is Scoop Jackson, Torre, Nelson George,
Andrew Ambrose Lee. What? Someone else?
Sway, and he's the only one that doesn't write. And then Ta-Nehisi Coates. You know what I mean? So anything that these cats are putting out, I'm like right into it. And Ta-Nehisi Coates is such an important voice. So I'm reading that. I'm probably going to just chill out and read that for a little bit as I decompress right after we get off of this awesome conversation. So go check out the new Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah. And you can follow the show at IBMTLTT on all platforms. You can follow me. Check out our Patreon show. I've been meaning to watch that. $3 for the audio feed, $5 for the video feed. We cover movies once a month. We also will cover like music documentaries, like concert films, all that such. Our Anchorman episode is out, and I believe you can follow me at Andrew Ambrose Lee on all platforms. Stenley at Snap a Sten, John at Jon Butts is here, Michael at Lemon Taco on all platforms. And Justin, any final thoughts? Any final sentiments that you want to leave your audience?
Nothing starts off dope, and don't eat yellow snow. And big thank you to you guys. This was actually a really great conversation. I had a lot of fun with it. I really appreciate you guys' perspective on this project, and especially coming from maybe not you, John, because you sound like you had it in your CD player, but it's always really interesting, but also important for me. I take it as important for me when I hear people describe albums that they didn't hear when they were out, because that's really the true test, the test of what brilliance is as it translates in the future. There are some albums that it's universally known that's what this is. But when people have the courage to be honest about I get it, but really, I'm not saying any of you guys are doing that, but I really appreciate you guys, your perspective on this project. Because there's a lot of times it's also really easy for people to say, oh yeah, Illmatic a classic. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, clearly. and they leave the criticism without it. And I think it's necessary for the discourse to embrace, you know, different perspectives from different generations.
Yeah, I you know, I try to approach this very humbly, very with like a curious mindset. So I appreciate that compliment. That's very lovely. Yeah. And thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Peace, y'all.